Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to this edition of the Tuesday Telecast. And welcome to my friend and my twin, Carrie. Let's all wave to Carrie. Carrie, wave to the audience. Yeah. So here's the thing. Carrie and I are creatives, and I talk a lot to all of you about ways forward with whatever you're passionate about, and how to lift yourself up when you get stuck in a rut, or even life sticks you in the ditches. And that creative energy is also energy that can drive us forward, but when we don't get to do it, we get really stuck. So um Carrie and I are going to sit here and have a conversation right in front of you about the power of story, and the power of our stories, and the power of a story, and all the things about creation and story. So here we go. So Carrie, what did all that intro make you think of? What did that bring to mind while I was blathering there?
Well, first of all, um, so grateful to be with my twin. And I actually have surprisingly a lot of goosebumps running and energy running through me when you said that. That's never actually happened before when I'm talking to someone about this that much. And the reason for it is that there's a joyful part of life that you hit on in that, which is about being a creator for me and for you.
Yeah.
But more than that, it was when I'm doing what I'm doing from my heart, from my authentic self,
Yeah.
that is the state of being, being
Yeah.
that I'm just alive and untethered and and joyful. And I don't
Yeah.
notice those things while that's happening. They just are. I
Right.
can kind of notice it, but sort of in looking at why that was happening when I was doing that. But that's like out of that moment, right? Or out of that thing. And and also what gave me the little bit of goosebump shivers in a way was just you're talking about coming from those those bad places, those difficult places, those challenging places,
Yeah.
those things that happened from for me only
Mm-hmm.
from conditioning
Mm.
by others and society and systems and all this stuff. And then having adopted those, created my own stuff around all that. Like I conditioned myself as well. Like I was conditioned and then conditioned myself.
Right.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so like and what why I guess I had that feeling of yeah, it was release and energy is because I kind of know what I can do now to not do that. And I can sense when I'm falling into the condition, and I can look at my own story because that's what I do is tell stories, right? And my belief is all around that each one of us, that's our human ability. That's what separates us, which makes us human, is we're constantly telling stories with every thought in our head. I just call every thought a story because it is. It's our imagination, our creativity, our beliefs, our experiences, our perspectives
Mm-hmm.
create stories, and many of them are completely false, right? They're not what we want.
Right.
They're not what we, I mean, when I say we, I guess it's more like the I or the I am or the big collective of human consciousness.
Consciousness, however you see
Yeah.
consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's not that. It's not the stories coming from there.
Yeah.
But because I've actually had the experience of creating stories from there or not creating, because that would be taking credit for something I'm not doing, but in a sense transcribing from that source, giving it to me or letting it move through me in from my unique perspective. I'm really grateful for that, and that's joyous, and to know that. But I've also had some very, very difficult times,
Yeah.
and I didn't understand that, and it took me until, well, it's not took me any time. It just, my path went, and then I found that some answers about that and consciousness and things,
Yeah.
but like, but it was difficult, and I don't look back at anything in my life or anything as regret, because, well, there's a couple of reasons. One, it's useless to do because you can't do anything about it. And two, more importantly for me, what is, and that got me here. And so I'm grateful for all the experiences, even as difficult as many of them I perceived at the time were almost, like impossible or so disparaging or whatever it is that you might do in your own mind about those things, the story you can create around that was also causing me pain.
Yeah, that makes me think about the fact that we can be uh instantaneously, really, we can be the hero of our own story, and whatever it is that we have going on. And there's an uh I'm certainly not dissing anything in life. The moment we're born, more of us than not are start battling some things that we have no idea what to do with, because we just pop into the world and we're looking for how to be and how to love, and we already are, we're already being, but we're trying to figure out how to, hey, how to communicate. I want to make sure that I can get out of the that I can be fed, and I can get out of the rain, and I can get out of the sun, and the way I do that is by crying or by smiling. And then there's a reaction to that, and then we learn, and some things we can't learn so directly, like why do those things that I feel around me feel so not right, but yet I'm also sensing love with those things. And and it's very confusing to be a little kid. And then later on, it can the traumas can come from not being accepted, from not being allowed to be to communicate in the way that is our intrinsic nature,
Mm.
to not be able to solve problems in the way that's natural to us, or we just get run over by a bulldozer, or we break all the bones in our body, or things from the outside. There's all sorts of different kinds of trauma, and here we are, and we've somehow gotten past that, and we are the heroes of our own stories, because we're being, like you said, like being, and we're being something else. I'm not being that. I'm being
Yeah.
something else. That's the good thing about being a creative and be creating things, being the creator of our own stories. And then the stories around us is that we get to be something else. That's exactly what we choose to be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. And I see also with that story, just everybody tells stories. And so everybody gets to write the story of their existence at this moment.
Yeah.
Like, and whatever came before just simply came before. It can be used to tell a new story, but it's also not important, because humans our intelligence and our imagination and our ability to just be is inherent,
Yeah.
and it's there. And so our imagination can and has saved a lot of people from trauma
Mm-hmm.
by simply looking at it like it's a story, and that imagination can turn the story into something else. I can become a hero rather than the victim, or or the person who can't do or anything, literally by just imagining that is true.
And
Like,
that's the value of that story, is also is how do we know, like how can we could end up in a bad story, right? Since everybody's
Right.
telling all these stories, what about all the stories out there we can say of our the people who we identify with, whether they're a certain nationality or a certain religion or a certain color or certain gender identification, a certain sexuality identification, a certain religious identification. There are stories about those things, and some of those stories are like, you know, whole countries telling stories, or what we see in the media as whole countries. And there's this story of, and there's somebody else's story of, and we start having what's good and what's bad and what's hurtful toward us, what's hurtful toward those who we love, and how we can save ourselves by looking by getting rid of all of the problems over here and just pushing them away and uh, um, does the story feel does it feel good, or does it feel like a desperate, like, yeah, we gotta just do this thing, and it just feels like like something you desperately need to go into? Does it just feel good, or are we being, or does it feel icky, or does it feel like it's the only way? His stories are so powerful, and they're everywhere, and we do get to choose.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Like,
Yeah.
there's an interesting thing I've discovered for myself, and I've discovered it in working with other creatives. Um, Human beings want a story,
Mm,
and
yeah.
sometimes or not sometimes, many of us, in all the things you just described, are believing a story that doesn't align with the story that we think
Yeah.
wants to be told from our heart. But we need a story to survive. And so we'll pick a team, or we'll ignore that the story's wrong to be a part of, or all these things. But in the end, since it's all imagination and all human created, like, it's just another story, and you don't have to
Right.
believe, or you could rewrite any of the stories, can be rewritten on the spot. They can just be rewritten right now. You
Right.
don't have to believe this plot of land is better than the people in it are better than the plot of land right next door to us. Even though that story's been told and keeps being told ad nauseum and has its little intricacies and all the things about it, you don't have to tell that story to yourself. You
Right.
can choose to tell another story. Does that mean that that story's not in the world? No, it's in the world. It stays in the world. But maybe by us starting to tell ourselves the different story, starting to recognize what stories we align with, just that
Yeah.
knowledge. Oh, wait, it's all a story. Do I align with that story fully and see
Yeah.
why or why not? Then you can have your own new story. And then that's the way I see. To me, that's awareness, discovering awareness of consciousness, awareness of human awareness of what we are here. And so once people become aware, then change happens, because you can no longer, once you're aware of something, you can't put that back inside the box. Well, I guess some humans do with their storytelling, but
You
you don't have
can.
to.
Yeah, I mean that's a thing about part of what you were saying, and I mean I love what you were saying. We Yes, we choose, but we also choose because we have to, because there's like a place, like, we don't exist without a story. We just like we don't exist. We ourselves don't exist to ourselves without adhering to some story. And
Mm.
then we forget that we can change that story. And then when we discover it again and we start that seems to be like where the consciousness comes in. Like, but I think sometimes some of us more than others forget more times and
Yeah, I
along the
would
way.
agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I'd also say, though, that maybe that is true, but maybe that's the cause of lack of true awareness. Like, if you can accept the idea that no matter what we're doing in this world, it's actually just us inside a movie,
Yeah.
that we are a character in that movie that we can actually create as it goes. It's not a set fixed character. This thing's happening, and we don't have to follow the storyline of it happening at any moment. If you become aware that it's a story and you're a character in that
Yeah.
story, you can change course.
Right.
you can just change course. And it's like, wait a minute, no, is everything going to line up perfectly? No. Is that other story going to continue to exist? Yes, but you don't have to be a part of it. Many characters move out of the story and go away, and they're in a different story now, and this other story's going on.
Right, right. It's in a different movie theater. It's a different, it's a different
Right.
timeline, and that's okay. And like what we strive, what is our story of what we strive for? What's our story of what we want to strive for? And what's our story of what we are?
What we are, what we are. That's the thing for me. For me, what we are is the key. What is your authentic self? And can you unburden your mind between thoughts
Mhm.
enough to realize that it is a story and that you can feel and see and sense what you truly are. And then you can build a new story from that little sprout, even if it's a tiny sprout. And that new story may include all of the past
Yeah,
or parts of the past or some of the things you've done, or it may not. But there's nothing to fear in there. And this is the most important thing for me. There's nothing to be afraid of, to have a story, to alter a story, to rewrite completely a story, to start a new story, or to not know that you're telling stories. There's nothing to fear in any of that process. At any moment, you can just understand this story right now, storyline, it's not working for me. I'm hurting. I'm physically ill. I'm mentally ill. I like all this stuff's happening, and it's because of the story that I'm either repeating because someone else fed it to me,
accepting.
or
Or,
right. I'm believing in a story that's a false narrative.
yeah,
And there's no pain in knowing that. There's
right.
no real pain in that. That's what I've discovered. Actually, I discovered, I'll go another length. That's pure liberation to realize that. When you
Yeah.
realize that you're living a false narrative, it does have some fear because you might get into, oh, it was all this time I've done this and that. But the real liberation comes from, oh, I can write a new one right now, starting right now. And that's aligned with my heart. So it's not like making stuff up about who you are or something, because that's part of old story non-beliefs. But aligning with what you are and saying, oh, X, Y, and Z's happened to me over my life, and I discovered something about myself that I really and truly love. And then there's a lot of it that I didn't love. So now it's time to get writing. Let me write in the love stuff. I love all this, I love it.
Yeah.
Like this parts of me. I love that. These I don't like. Okay, well, this character no longer needs to do that.
And I want to wind my way over to where you are by acknowledging that we are creatives. We are people. I identify as a hyper creative. This is entirely how my mind works. Is it how everybody's mind works? No.
No,
But the creative, as creative people, this is how we go outside of the box. We find things in the box. There's all sorts of stuff that we do in the box. We exist in boxes, right? But then, because we believe what we believe, and we just believe that we're going through the box, we just exit the box right through it. Or maybe we don't believe there's any box and the box disappears, poof. And and then we write something new. But then there's just that. How does somebody who suddenly has this epiphany go to create their own story? Says there can be this blank slate, and that blank slate can be so scary. Like, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to choose. I don't know. I don't know what to be. I don't know what to sing, what to dance, what beat to make, what to draw. I don't know, because I don't draw. I don't write. I don't dance. I don't sing. I'm not creative. And that's another story
right.
that we
So
tell ourselves.
Yeah. So I,
I ask what, I mean, to bring it back to what you were saying, I ask, what do you love? Because that's the last thing you were saying. What do you love?
yeah,
Start there.
exactly. Exactly. And I think part of overarching stories that are false narratives tend to label and give symbols to people and things. But um, yeah, you and I are creatives. Like that's something we know. I don't really find any value in that, calling myself that in a way, because
Yeah.
I think like it's just who I am.
It's a label that so that somebody else understands, but for us, yeah.
Right. But I think what happens, I think what you're talking about is um, something that is about people's beliefs and about themselves
Yeah.
and how they adhere to false narratives about what creativity is. And since words, and this is my world, is words, but words are the most limiting thing in the world, although
Mm.
they are able to have separated us as humans from, the rest of the animals and parts of the world,
Yeah.
or that's our distinction. They're very limiting. They're incredibly limiting. And when you apply something like you're a creative and I'm a creative, or you say things like I'm not creative, these are false narratives.
Yeah.
And it just does not mean, like you were saying, that you need to paint or you need to write or you need to make movies or music or something else. This is not at all what any of that stuff's about. Everybody's creative.
Yeah.
Everybody is a creator
Yeah.
and a creative. And
Yes.
so, because at least for me, I was able to cope through life through my creativity. I had to lean into it because of the life that the conditioned world was forcing on me. So I was able to do that, and maybe it's part of it's not even maybe it's part of my natural ability to do that, like what I came here
Mm.
with. But that does not mean that someone who's interested in a new story about something else, whatever that is, can't just create it. It gets odd when people believe that you have to be a writer or a painter or a musician or something to be creative, but that's just not true at all. There's an unlimited amount of creative abilities.
Right. Absolutely. Even
Unlimited.
just to the point of what you go to, what story you go to from what creator you maybe follow, what creator uh, moves you, and how you add to that story. Like, I'm thinking, like growing up in the 80s, like having real consciousness in the 80s. There are all these stories about conflict, about pressure, about nukes and commies. Now this happens all over the world at some point, and all the time. But I'm just saying, like you and I, and in the 80s, there was that going on. There was that story, and what what stories did we follow because of that? What music did we follow that commented on that? What crowds were we in cheering, or where were we with the art that we connected to? And then how did that affect our own story? How did we add into that story of that artist we followed, or that, because for sure there are so many people watching this show who know exactly what I'm talking about, in who are somewhere around our age, and in the 80s they either they followed some sort of artist, some sort of music, some sort of books, some sort of shows, something that reflected that. And were you seeing the children of people that scared you? Were you seeing nothing to be scared of at all? Were you scared and wanted to stop? Were you flying the flag of peace? Were you hiding under your desk? Where was your mind?
Yeah, right. So then that means that we intuitively have alignment with stuff, whether we know it or not.
Yeah.
whether we know it or not. And and we also don't know if we don't look if that's if we're doing things to adopt the story of somebody else either, you know? So like finding that space, that idea, that awareness. Oh, I could do that. You know, like there's some things I loved, just absolutely loved, you know, some musicians, some
Yeah.
artists, some movies, some things I just loved. And I understood that they were speaking to the true me. I mean, I didn't understand it then. I understand it now. I shouldn't
Yeah.
say I understood it, but like the feeling is of that. And so everybody does that. For
Mm-hmm.
me, it's that's resonance, like resonance with my core being.
Yeah.
It's not exactly the way I would tell that story, but I'm all in on how it's making me feel about what's going on or
Yeah.
informing me about something. And anyone can do that. There doesn't you don't need to be creative to do it. I shouldn't say anyone can do it. Everybody's doing it.
Everybody does it. Right.
Right? They're just doing it constantly, right? So, but what's not happening with a lot of people is they're not recognizing whether they're actually moved by that story or not moved by it. And so then you start to follow false narratives because the stories
That is the story.
that is the story. And I've been told that's the story, or I've even wanted it to be the story because, but even though my heart's saying, I don't really this all of all of this or most of this or none of this is something I really at my core resonate with. Right. But
Right.
it's a story for me to hang on to.
Yeah.
And I get it. I get that there's so much trauma in the world, and that since we're human beings who tell stories, the story, whether it's even causing in pain to other people by adhering to that story,
Right.
is at least makes someone soothe their trauma a certain amount,
Yeah.
you know. And I get that. I understand that. And but I also think that many people are not aware at all that we're storytellers and we also connect with stories as much as we tell stories. And if that story doesn't really connect with your heart, but it's something to latch onto, you'll repeat that as a storyteller that a human is. You'll repeat that,
Yeah.
whether it's a some sort of any political ideology or religious ideology or just uh, you know, schoolyard politics or the nonsense that goes on about being better than somebody else, even if it's only a tiny bit better, or any of this stuff, because you're not aware that we tell stories. We're not brought up, even though we're brought up by stories, we're not brought up to say, you get a choice in which story that you resonate with.
Yeah.
And even though we're doing it as kids, we're resonating with these stories that somehow hit us, but
Yeah.
we're also forced to read the other story and told that that's a better story or that's the right story or this thing. And it's just not true. It's just simply not true. Whatever story is written is written. It doesn't
Right.
have a value to it it has a great value. I'm saying I'm using the wrong word. It does not have a qualifier that's of any value.
Right.
This is opinion, you know, and this is something I've had to learn through my own journey as a creator of movies and other things like that is that
Yeah.
no one can tell me what's better or worse
Mm-hmm.
in my work. Only I can. Only I can. And then but then I have to let go and say everyone's opinion might not line up with this.
Mm.
And that's just okay because it's all just opinion. There's no
Mm-hmm.
more, doesn't make what I'm doing of less value. But I went through a long, long time of living from that perspective, trying,
Uh,
listening to the opinions of people who were gatekeepers to my success and trying to figure out how I can bring a little of me and a little of them to open the gate to what I perceived then would be success for me.
and believing in this story, being in love with this story, being this story. I am in a story. I am creator of my story. I resonate with a story. You are your story. You resonate with a story. You create your story. And we create our story and we are our story. And it's that actual point of presence
Mm.
that makes it real. That
Yeah.
just makes it real. That's what, and it doesn't mean that you like your reality right now, but it's because you are that reality. And you, if it's not aligned with what you like, then you don't like it.
Yeah.
Period. Like there's a box or there isn't a box. There's it's just us.
Yeah. 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 What's crazy about all that is that I had done this a lot of my life, right? Like I don't like horror movies, or I don't like this kind of writing, or like I don't like the real reality stuff. The beat guys don't do it for me. Like, like I don't, but that's just me. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. Those deserve to be out there. That, I mean, everything
Yeah.
needs to be there so that those who resonate with it, who want to get scared, for instance, in a horror movie, can go and have that happen for them. Right? All of
Right.
this stuff is like, it's not as complicated like as connecting with consciousness, or all the stuff. I mean, all of it's true what we were just saying, but it also is just like it's opinion, and you have the senses in you to understand what resonates with you. And if something doesn't, you don't. There's no reason to do it. You can just lean into the stuff that does. Right? It's pretty. In some ways, it's like I'm always shocked at how simple it is to be, while at the same time having this incredibly complex brain that makes me not want to simply just be. Like that's a weird nexus to be in, but that's my nexus. I don't know if anyone resonates with that, but that's my place in the world. But that seems to be sometimes about storytelling. I mean, not sometimes, always about storytelling.
I
It's
think
just
so.
about storytelling.
Yeah, just that.
Yeah.
You are being in that complicated nexus. And depending on how you're being in it at a time, it may not be complicated. It may just flow. And if we choose that, then it does. Like something that you said earlier, just a moment ago, was that it's not that complicated. So there it is. Is it that complicated, or isn't it that complicated? When we just are what we are, I I am white, I am American, I am hungry, I am thirsty, I am fat, I am thin, I am whatever we are. And then all the other things that go beyond that. I am creative, I am prosperous, I am happy, I am in love, I am loved. I These are all of this is what we are. And when we are that, then that thing is entirely our reality. Just entirely our reality. And it's sort of simple in that. You can drop a pin and decide that that's what you are. And as long as you believe what that pin lands on, that is your story. Or you can choose it and that is your story. I and I want to take this to bring us to something that recently happened where I stated what I am in my world. You stated what you are in your world, and we each knew this thing about one another. But suddenly, I decided there's a way that I make music, and it doesn't have any barriers, and it doesn't need to be in a studio, and it doesn't need to be anything except that it needs to create an atmosphere because that's what I do and that's what I am. And that's everything that I identified with. And I said, and I want to create the atmosphere with someone, and I want to create the atmosphere with my friend Carrie. And I stated it. And Carrie, what happened when I said that to you?
Well, my first response was gratitude and appreciation and alignment and resonance because and I don't think I even told you this. So this is really interesting because later I thought of this. But I have always struggled with some my projects with the composing elements of music and finding a way in because my way of being is not I don't just choose to do something against the grain to choose to do against the grain, but my being is always an experiment of something to try something new creatively
Mm,
and so I've never been able to actually figure out what the music that would be in a movie in one of my films or in my film projects, what that would be like, what it would sound like. I understand fully has to be it has to fit the vision of whatever's happening. That part I always got, right? But
yeah,
I could never figure out because everyone's doing it a certain way. You know, there's John Williams and there's X, Y, and Z, and every composer I've ever met since that is just a derivation of that school of working at it, right? And so they work
yeah,
and they make some beautiful compositions. So this is no qualifying on it, but like
yeah,
so this little movie I did 15, 20 years ago or something, like I didn't even have score. You know, I had my friend who wrote songs in it, punk rock songs, and people recording stuff. Like, and sometimes I put some of the parts of it in there, but I also didn't. But it was missing music. But I could not figure out. I knew it didn't belong to the score type people. Like, it just didn't
yeah,
belong there, you know.
right,
And so I just tried to do something original, you know, with someone doing something. But even then, I didn't do enough of it because I thought, well, that also didn't exactly fit. So it doesn't necessarily need it. Um, and just, I
yeah,
guess, and I'm only using that example as that I've always sort of, in a sense, struggled with how that music plays, even though I sort of understand you know, you've got the Star Wars songs and you've got that stuff and it all. But I don't really. It's not that my movies aren't like that. My movies make are about little simple stories that are. I mean, you know, because you've read the script for the next one. But they're typical movies. I mean, when I say I want to engage, entertain, and enlighten people, the first two are more important to me than the third, even though that's a big goal.
yeah,
Because so I'm not making these crazy experimental movies. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Even that other movie wasn't like that. It was just a screwball comedy about how people vote, you know, like a, you
right,
know, low budget thing. So, but as a creative, I never felt right. As a film director, I never felt right about that music in my movie thing. And after you told me
yeah,
that, that was the gratitude. I realized, oh, I'm finally talking to someone who wants to play with that idea, who
yeah,
doesn't just want to put the score. This part is tense, so we've got to go whatever, you know. And then, or I
yeah,
say no, maybe we cut completely against that, and then they go, oh, okay, it's a happy little. I mean, all of that's cool, but like to really dive in and be open to, as you say, atmospheric music, but I would say that's actually closer to what I would understand as score in all movies because
right.
literally that's all that piece is doing is helping amplify what's happening between the characters or whatever you're doing on the screen, whether it's a documentary or anything else. Like it's about amplifying or supporting or changing, you know, cutting the grain on. There's a million things
It's
that it
as it's as important as the air on the set. It's important as the feelings. And you can't touch the feelings. You can't, but we get that from hearing stuff, and we get that it supports us, like it's part of it. There's something
Yeah,
that you're really kind of, I'm thinking out loud, and as you were talking, you are a musician. That's the thing. It's not like you don't get this, even like you and you don't do it in a professional way, but you get music, and you play. You play for fun. You play for what, for whatever. But you play guitar. And this is just the thing. So it's not, none of this, I'm sure it's like this for other things, that people out there are thinking of, but none of this is cut and dried. Like just because it's music doesn't mean it just drops in there. And just because we can play music doesn't mean that we can just do this. And even if we identify 100% as a musician, as a composer, doesn't mean that we'll ever connect the dots, because we think of all this, oh, this is the way the industry standard goes, and I don't get it. And we may be brilliant in our field, and we may be brilliant and we certainly are in our story, in our creation of our story. We're not just struck with a lightning bolt and suddenly we can dance. It just doesn't work like that. So we say, I don't know how to connect, and then we try to connect, and all of a sudden it's like, we don't have to know how, we're just going to do it. there's no We're just going to do it. And it's just like an epiphany, and it's like,
right, right.
it's
And
like, oh,
so,
maybe someone did just strike us with a lightning bolt. Maybe.
right, yeah. And there's something, I don't know who I was telling this to just the other day, but it was another friend, and I was like, when I'm working, like, I hate that word, by the way, the W word.
Yes.
But if I'm making something, if I'm on the set and I'm there creating, I don't know anything.
Mm.
And most people identify a film director as this stereotype of like moving pieces on a chessboard, or knowing what each moment needs, or this and that, and that this person needs to walk from this way, and the camera has to go this way, and all that stuff, which never was a thing for me. But when I'm there, just wrapped in being able to understand the vision of what this story wants to tell the world,
Mm.
what it wants to tell the world, not what I want to tell the world, not what the actors want to tell the world,
Yeah.
not what the composer wants to
To
tell the
tell the
world,
world.
not with what the lighting person and the cinematographer, all of these things that go into it. When you start to find people, so if I'm there doing that and I'm working with people like that, like I am so me at my core. I am the being that things just happen. They just happen, and they happen beautifully for my being, and that's all I have to give. I'm not,
Yeah.
it's not like that's creation, right? Whether or not people love it, flock to the theaters or not, it's none of my business. My business is so, to extend of how I felt when you told me that, that was like this giant feeling of, oh, a composer finally, someone to talk about all the music, how that can really fulfill what each part that there needs to be music in can be. Like, I just understood without words that that is what you and I could do. Whereas I've never had that before. And it's not about never having it before. It's just that it's sort of filled this little hole in me in that one area of that. Like, it just made me understand,
Where there was no invested energy
no.
before there, and all of a sudden there was invested energy, and
Yeah,
that's.
and it's just like the entire projects that I do. They take forever to get off the ground, one might say.
Mhm.
But the right pieces have to line up. You can
Yeah.
find, I've found many pieces, not for this current project, in the past. I've made happen stuff, but they weren't aligned. And
Yeah.
so that's a sacrifice of a vision by doing that. That's a compromise that isn't really in alignment with me and I don't want to do anymore. So it was nice to find that
Right.
piece up front when
Right.
usually in the film business that's an after piece,
It's like
right?
you
That's
want
after.
it's like you want a banana in on the set, and you have to, and instead you're just like, I want a yellow thing, and you put in another yellow thing, and it's not a banana, and it doesn't, and
Right. Yeah,
it's
right.
just
Right. Like, and I've come to understand that that's like living. Like that's what we started this whole thing with. That's the
it's
story. And I could tell myself
it's life.
the story, the yellow thing's okay, you know, and but is it? And do I need to do that? And can I just wait? Or can I pause? Can I let something pass? Can I let this angst or something? I got to get this done. So I'm going to stick the yellow thing in. And I mean, using it as the movie metaphor, but that's life. Like, can I just be patient? Can I, if
It
the
is.
things don't line up in my little daily schedule that I put, I've got to meet with so and so at so, and they're 10 minutes late. Like, like, can I just not compromise and get upset or do something, do something, which is like choosing the yellow thing that's not the
Object.
banana,
Yeah.
right? It's like choose in life. And that's like anyone does this, doesn't matter. Like we're
Anything.
extrapolating this out from our kind of creative work, but this isn't creativity.
No, it's a lot like
No.
life. It is life. It is the essence of being, and it is all about, it's all about the stories, whether we accept the yellow thing, or we go for the banana, or we accept the yellow thing after and say, oh, it wasn't the banana, it just doesn't feel right.
And
It's a
all of
lot
that's
like
okay.
life. It's
All
all
of that's, and
just,
the thing
yeah.
is, all of that's okay if we can. No, not if we can. It's all okay. But a way that makes my life so much more a joyful thing is to not do that, to be okay with the nothing that might come out of waiting for the banana and not jumping on the yellow thing. There
Yeah.
may be just some nothingness, some pause, some thing that I can't do, and I don't do it. I can choose the yellow thing, or maybe I can just wait for the banana, or maybe and then that breeds figuring a way around to get the banana that's in line with who I am, that isn't forceful, that isn't somebody else pays the price for my things and this and that, and it takes away the judgment or the thing. I'm just waiting for the banana. I'm just waiting for the banana, and I'm just
That's
gonna
all it
and I'm
is.
gonna and while I'm waiting, some ideas about how I can get the banana and how I can fit that are coming in, and I'm not choosing the yellow thing. Which is like, and I can say that from my personal experience as a young person, like I chose the yellow thing all the time,
Yeah.
you know, and it was bad for me, bad, you know, and so,
But look at you
but
now.
right, no, I'm not worried about that. What I'm just saying is, like, that's an example
Yeah.
of what it could be. It can be really bad, but I didn't have to choose that then. I understand that now. I'm grateful for all those moments lining up, but like, why carry? For me, there's no carrying it forward in anything, in my work, in my life, in my thing. Yes, my brain is like everybody else's. Sometimes it can't. The conditioning sneaks back in and wants me to, and I grab the yellow thing. I do that,
Sure.
but I'm much more joyous because I understand this concept and can then go, okay, I grab the yellow thing. What I really want is a banana. I'm just gonna wait, figure out how to get the banana, and I don't have anyone else to tell a story to, like I don't have to. I can just tell my own story to myself. And and then I waited for the banana and I got it, and that aligned with who I really am, and that's all that matters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
You took the banana instead of the yellow thing, and that made all the difference.
yeah.
This is an apt ending to our conversation, because I'm noticing the time,
Yeah.
but I'm also just marveling at how it just comes back around to where we started in this conversation.
Mhm.
And that's the that's kind of the power of story.
Absolutely.
It really is.
Really is.
I appreciate you, and I'm so glad that you hopped on the show with me. And everyone, if you want to connect to Carrie, Carrie, how can people connect to you today?
You can connect to me through LinkedIn and or my website, which is carriecore.com. So,
All right,
uh,
and you have groups or a group on LinkedIn for people to, or is that on Facebook? No, it's on LinkedIn
no,
for
yeah,
the connected pictures. We will, as things develop, also we'll put things down below in the show notes, and it'll be great to connect with anyone who wants to connect with us.
yeah.
So
So grateful to be here. Thank you so much, my twin.
thank you, Carrie. I
Bum
appreciate you.
ba da da
The
dee dee
same.
da da dee da 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 dum. Bum ba dee da dee da da ba da 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 ba dum. Bum ba da dee da 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 dee da 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 dum. Bum ba da dee da ba da 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 dum.